Hello, and welcome to What is Innovation, the podcast that explores the reality of a word that is in danger of losing its meaning altogether. This podcast is produced by Outlast Consulting, LLC, a boutique consultancy that helps companies use innovation principles to solve their toughest business problems. I'm your host, Jared Simmons, and I'm so excited to have James Marable. A marketing strategist and entrepreneur with 15 years of experience, James Marable has advanced the field of marketing at the organizations he's worked with, leaving them more evolved in his wake. His career has encompassed social media strategy and implementation, leadership, entrepreneurship, employer branding, media production, product development, design, project management, promotional strategy, and event planning. A native of Dayton, Ohio, James launched his career as a marketing project manager after attending the University of Cincinnati, leading the execution of numerous national campaigns and product launches at various advertising agencies throughout his adopted home of Cincinnati. James, welcome to the show, my friend.
Thanks for having me, Jared. It's a pleasure to be here, to be able to sit down and talk to you. It's been a little while, so excited to catch up.
Yeah, it has been a while. I shamelessly using this podcast to connect with some of my favorite people that I've fallen out of touch with. So I'm excited to connect today.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's a great way to do it.
Yeah,
on the record.
Yeah, exactly. So let's dive right in, man. Tell me, what is innovation?
Innovation, to me, it's pretty simple, to be honest. It's seeing a gap and filling it, and that can manifest itself in many different ways. But at the end of the day, you want to be able to identify something, some need or experience or what have you that isn't being met, and then coming up with a better and more efficient way to kind of fill that hole.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about gaps. What do gaps look like?
Right now, we're in a time where there's an actual need that we're seeing from from an institutional level around diversity.
Right.
But this gap has been there, obviously since the founding of our nation, literally.
Exactly. Yes.
But and it's taken a long time for a lot of eyes to see that. But for these innovators or with innovative thinking that are trying to figure out ways that you can provide more opportunities, or kind of come up with a way to to allow persons of color to kind of see through the forest, and to be able to have their own business, or to be able to invest in in various markets or in real estate or what have you. Those are gaps, to a degree. And it's just like, how can someone or some organization just kind of come up with a better way to do things.
Yeah. And I like that you talked about, identifying the gap and then closing it. That can happen over different time horizons, right? I mean,
Yeah.
There's a gap that's existed since 1619, and it's not closed, but there's a lot of small steps that people are taking in the grand scheme of things to try to close that, not only for African Americans but for people of color in general. And I think innovation itself sometimes is a bit of a gap for companies, and also for people of color when they're kind of looking at how to be successful in the business world.
For certain. I mean, if you think about from a large corporate perspective, there are ways that the world works at a at the ground level. Let's say persons like us, just regular people,
Right.
certain things that we do that if you're in the ivory tower and and you're making a wonderful living, and and your life is been unaffected by let's say COVID right now, or because or through institutional racism or whatever.
Right.
You're a little bit blind to how things actually work, and there can be a person that can step in that is actually living this, or is actually really seeing like that there's that there's another gap, there's an underserved population, or there's this company could be making money doing X, Y, and Z, but they're not, because they don't even know that this is a thing. It takes that kind of innovative thinker to say, hey, there's a gap here. We need to be doing this. We need to be empowering more people. We need to be providing these services for for this community, or these persons who are looking to spend money, so to speak.
Yeah, no, that's right.
From that perspective.
Right. Yeah. I think The other element of what you're describing that jumps out is, when you talk about a gap, you have to be able to see both sides of it to know how big it is.
Exactly.
Right. And I think there's an element of how you work, how you will go about things, and how show up every day that is very authentic, but also, you have the ability to meet people where they are, even if they have differing viewpoints.
Yeah, exactly. And again, it takes that person that may see that gap to also be action oriented, because there are tons of people that call out what's missing or what could be done differently, or
Right.
how there's some sort of lack out there. But if they don't push forward to actually like make that change happen or to provide that service, then that's not innovation.
Mm,
People can call out what's missing all the time, but I mean, if you're not necessarily motivated enough, or have the resources or the ability to kind of push forward and actually enact that change or make that happen, then that's kind of where another gap kind of is created, because that next step is the action point. To me, is most important. Like, there are tons of things that I've seen over time, and like, if we were to jump into my store original thought required,
yeah. Yeah.
when I started that, my initial thinking, we had mentioned I had mentioned this to you before, off the record, that
Yeah.
I just wanted to do it. It was just kind of a dream. I just wanted to have my own store. But what I realized when I was picking where I wanted it to be, because it was a clothing store I wanted to do, graphic tees. I wanted to sell sneakers and all these things. This was like a college dream of mine. It could have been anywhere, but when I
Right.
actually got down to it and I understood that they were starting to gentrify over the Rhine, there probably weren't going to be a lot of black businesses that are a part of that plan. Hey, how can I figure out who's making moves, who's deciding what's going on, and what are they looking for in that area.
Right. Right.
And then I kind of stepped in, and then it kind of became like, okay, I'm a beacon now to kind of let other black businesses know, like, hey, you can do this down here. Like, it may not have been, or we may not have been included in the planning process of it, but we
Right.
can still jump in this thing and make it happen. And then they have to give us a seat at the table. They have to respect our point of view and our opinions. And the businesses that we want to create is just more so around kind of, again, like seeing that gap, seeing where change was coming,
Yeah.
seeing that we weren't necessarily included in that,
Right.
and then taking those necessary steps to making that happen.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I was just thinking out loud about how, just for context, for people who don't know Cincinnati, over the Rhine is a part of town in Cincinnati that was in transition, as they like to say. And you opened a store in the middle of that transition. I remember moving into the neighborhood in 2008, and there were a lot of businesses, homes, buildings being closed and shuttered and whatnot, and then repurposed. And the people that were reopening these stores didn't look like the people that lived in the neighborhood.
Hmm.
And so that's why one day I'm walking through the neighborhood, and I come across your store, and it was kind of one of those mind blowing moments where it's that just it didn't fit with everything else. It was this cognitive dissonance of this young guy, this young black guy, you know broke the you could literally look down the street, and it was
Yeah.
I'm sure you remember how it was, but coffee shops and clothing stores and all of these other things, but they were all owned by people who didn't look like the people that were displaced. And so to have you uh, kind of break that visually and economically, I think was an important thing for people of color to see in that city, in that neighborhood, in that time period.
Most definitely.
Yeah. Tell me about what that store meant to you personally.
Coming out of school, coming out of college, I wanted to have my own clothing store. I've been traveling, the country to,
Hmm.
to get all these unique pieces and all this different stuff. Like, if you know me, like, I'm literally a shopaholic. I have a ridiculous amount of clothing shoes, like, to this day. Like, it's just crazy. So really, I wanted to have my own store because that's what everybody knew me for. So I knew, like, my personal brand was that, I'm a stylish person, and I had always been, I had this entrepreneurial spirit. So I'm like, I'm gonna do this.
Yeah.
And when I really got into it, decided where I wanted it to be, started really like laying that groundwork. Um, I realized that there were going to be some serious sacrifices that I had to make in my life to make this thing happen.
Mm.
So, in this process, I was living down in that area as well, some in a rehab loft that was,
Yeah.
way more money than I should have been spending on it. And,
Yeah.
kind of doing, like living that young corporate,
Yep.
professional life or whatever.
Yes.
I realized like I can't have this business, quit my job and stay in this apartment. So it was like, all right, well, I'm going to, when my lease is up, I'm moving out, and
Mhm.
I signed a lease for the place, and I was kind of staying in the back, in the back room of that, staying with my girlfriend at the time, staying with, with friends and family and what have you,
Yeah.
until like I could get back, on solid ground. It took
Right.
me another 6 months, after we opened, to like, all right, now, I'm in a place I can, I can support myself and, and do these things. But
Yeah.
it's like just that, like, and I could go on and on about various sacrifices, but like that bonded me with that place. So it
Right.
really mattered to me, how that business worked, how things would go. Then I started meeting people. My very first intern, Markeith Harris, I'm gonna name him. He was, 19 years old, fresh out of high school, didn't really know what he wanted to do with himself. Was very creative, was into music. And he found out about the store just on Twitter. Like we had no
Oh, wow.
connection at all. Like didn't know him
Wow.
from Adam. And he came down there, and I think I made a post about, if anybody I knew anybody that wanted to be an intern, like, send them my way. Well,
Mhm.
he saw that tweet, and I don't even know how he was even following me at that time. Mind you, this is 2010. It's a long time ago. And
Right. Yeah.
but he was following me, and he came down to the store, was like, hey, I'm interested in, in doing this. He had a little resume, was barely anything on it. Again, he just graduated high school, wasn't in school, just kind of trying to figure his life out.
Yeah.
Brought
Yeah.
him in, and just kind of just started working with him, started training him up, started giving him just different viewpoints and ways to look at life. Now, like we still talk all the time. He just recently graduated and got his bachelor's degree. Like he was just like,
Nice.
it wasn't a dream of mine at the time, but I see, this is something I need in life. Like he went back to school and he did his thing, and like stuff like that, like just makes me proud. And just like even with him, like he's taken other roles and different jobs over the years, and really is progressed every year. Like I just see him grow exponentially, and it's just crazy to me, like a person like him. And like I can go on and on. It's
Yeah.
tons of people that come through, whether they were college students or musicians or artists. Yeah, I worked with someone who, her name is Tia. Tia, she was a mom. She was working at the Ford plant. Just kind of living life.
Right.
But she also had like this artistic dream, of being able to kind of show her work and have a display. We did an art show for her, and it went so well.
Mm.
It just made me think like, hey, let's start like we can start you a t-shirt line right now, like whatever, like and then I showed her how to digitize her work, how to get the stuff printed up,
Right.
and she had like one of our better sellers, with the design that was inspired by Barack Obama.
Wow.
It was super dope, like, and just like knowing that, like, and then she was able to go on and do whatever with herself. There's t-shirt lines, black owned in Cincinnati. I don't know who's all familiar, but black
Mm.
owned is an apparel company. They've got their own store. They actually have a coffee shop now, Black Coffee. Those guys were just kind of selling t-shirts out of their trunk. Like I recognized that and said, hey, come on in here. Like let's do a pop-up shop for you guys. Let's shoot an electronic lookbook for you guys. Let's let me carry your brand as well. A
Yeah.
couple years later, like they were in position to own their own, like to have their own store.
Wow.
So these kind of stories are the reason why that store is so important to me
Mm.
in my development. I would say because I've always been a leader. I've always, there's always been people around that have sort of gravitated to some of the things that I've done.
Mhm.
But like to actually like have this impact and be able to look back, like I closed the store June of 2016.
Oh,
To
okay.
this day, like I still see people wearing the clothes. I go out, like people are coming up to me talking to me about experiences that they've had at the shop. When
Yeah.
they were there when they were 16, and now they're in their late 20s, or they were in college and now they're 30 plus years old. Like it's just near and dear. I mean,
Yeah.
I really cut my teeth in that place. It was something that I kind of not I didn't do it on a whim, but it wasn't with the intention that it was going to be what it was. I just thought I was going to have a store. I
Right.
didn't
Right.
realize what it was going to mean to other people. How I was going to inspire other people. But once I caught on to like what was happening in real time, it really pushed me to kind of make it even more than just a store, just this place where people can come and hang out and drink cheap wine or whatever on Friday night. Like
Right.
it just really, it just really became a space and and sort of my calling card, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's the first thing that comes to mind when I think of you. I think of James. I think original thought required,
Hmm.
and you and I, we've volunteered together, we've done other things together, but that to me is a big part of your identity in my mind, and I do know that it served a bigger purpose in the community, and it sounds like it served a bigger purpose in your life.
Hmm.
And that's the kind of thing that to me is a hallmark of a truly innovative endeavor, is that
Hmm.
its impact is greater than the sum of its parts. You close gaps that you didn't even see.
Right.
And
which is
that's
which is crazy
yeah.
in
And that's
itself.
crazy. Yeah, yeah. It's important, and it's one of those things where like you use the phrase real time. I mean, when we're going about our day-to-day lives, you're running your store trying to sell sneakers and keep the lights on and everything, and opportunities are coming in and out of your door to influence people, to help people, to change lives and all those things, and not everybody has their head up to see those opportunities and take advantage of them. And so I think it's important that you did, because it wasn't like you had a cushy corporate job to fall back on. And if you spent 24/7 trying to figure out your own stuff, nobody would fault you for it.
Right.
So I think it's important. That also highlights, everybody's in a position to think in an innovative way and to be helpful to someone else, and to help other people solve their problems as well.
Most definitely. I mean, even the name,
Yeah.
original thought required. I mean, it was a play on the neighborhood, OTR,
Right. Yeah.
over the Rhine, but
Yeah.
original thought required, like the whole point of the store is to come in here, see new things. Like, don't be hampered by, these brands that you already know. Like, everybody that we carried was like an up and coming brand, created by a person,
Right.
so to speak, like,
Yep.
where this was their thing and they're trying to make something else happen. And I wanted people to be able to come in and see, like, oh wow, maybe I could sell stuff in here, or maybe, I just really like this shirt. I just really like this, this sweatsuit, and I'm gonna buy it, not because this name on it necessarily makes me cool.
Right.
I'm buying it because it's dope.
Yeah.
And that's like my whole thing is just like people being able to kind of think outside of the box, if that makes sense. And it was actually like one of my first designs. It was like a square and it had original thought required, around the box, and then OTR at the bottom,
Oh yeah.
four corners,
Yep.
four sections. But it's like that's where we were coming from all along.
Yeah, that's beautiful. How do you think that that mindset and that way of thinking that spawned the store? How do you think that comes into play in your corporate world today?
In my corporate roles that I've had, and
Mhm.
especially post OTR, it was more so, or it more so comes out in a sense that I try to not get hampered down by what we've always done.
Right.
That phrase right there. So, I've had conversations with certain individuals, in different roles that I've had where, I'm suggesting a change or to say, hey, we should do this. And a lot of times, like, the thinking, what I see with this, especially in the corporate spaces, well, we've always done this, or this is how it is, or, you know, creating something, or running some sort of program based on the parameters of things that already existed. However, it's not necessarily solving a new problem, or it's not solving a new issue, or providing new opportunity. It's more
Hmm.
so just addressing what always was.
Right.
That's not innovative. Like, if I was to say
Yep.
what innovation isn't, is putting a different name on something that already exists. Like, literally, like that. And that is what you find in a lot of corporate space.
Yes,
Like,
sir.
people don't want people don't want to risk their jobs. People don't want to, try something new and then
Yep.
fail at it, and then they're reprimanded, or they don't get that promotion, or they don't bonus out, and when the
Yep.
year, when it's time for that. So it
That's
kind
right.
of makes you step back and just kind of go with the status quo.
That's such a great point. Yeah. You're incentivized to put more effort into making something look innovative or look
Yep.
new and different,
Yep.
than in actually taking the risk to create something new and different that might solve a different problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So my whole approach is, when I started, like, most people weren't comfortable utilizing social media. So, like, I work with a lot of recruiters and HR professionals,
Hmm.
and they were just kind of, just sending messages on LinkedIn, or kind of just searching through Indeed and Glassdoor and those kind of platforms. But the reality is, it's like social media, like directly posting to your page and interacting with people, in a public forum is kind of where, the world is,
Yeah.
and it's very hard to kind of make impact and make people kind of see your overall company culture or the opportunities that you have if you're not like directly interacting via social media.
Right.
So for me, it was like my first thing is like, okay, I need to set up a bunch of road shows so I can show everybody, how they can, properly get active on social media and engage with, with their followership to kind of evangelize like
Mm,
our
right.
company to say,
Yep.
hey, I'm a recruiter here. These are the opportunities that we have going on. Let me highlight a person that, that just won an award, or let me highlight somebody in the company that's been with the company for 30 years or 40 years or whatever. Like, I'm not saying that that is true innovation per se, but it's more so around like just getting people to think differently.
Well, I think it is innovation by my definition and by your own definition because you saw a gap and you closed it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the word new and the word innovative have gotten tied to each other
Hmm.
for some reason in the last 20 years. Not everything that's innovative is new.
Yeah, exactly.
Not
that
everything
that
that's new is innovative.
yeah, no, that is very true. But yeah, like when I'm in the corporate space, I just try to treat everything like how I just do my life. If there's
Mhm.
something that needs to be changed, I'm going to say something about it. If we're doing great, like, still think about how to make it better. But if it doesn't need to be made better, then you don't.
Yeah.
Talk to everyone as peers, like whether it's, I'm talking to a senior vice president, whatever, anyone above me, we're still people. We all put our pants on one leg at a time. Do you remember Bold Fusion?
Yes. Yeah, I do.
Yes, yeah. So Bold Fusion is, I'm not sure, but this huge young professional conference that they have annually here in Cincinnati. Up to 1,000 people
Mhm.
come and attend every year. Young professionals to kind of learn, how to progress their career, how to, network and just be better, business people, so to speak.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
I spoke at one 2016 or 17, and my topic was around entrepreneurship
Mhm.
and the
Right.
concept of having an entrepreneurial spirit, but in a workplace
Yes.
or in your corporate workplace, because
Yes.
in a lot of cases, especially now for millennials and whatever's behind us, because now millennials are old, I guess. But
Yeah.
it's very important to kind of think like that, because sometimes they've pushed that everybody should be an entrepreneur on us so bad, like so much.
Right. Right.
Like everybody's not an entrepreneur. Like it is what it
Right.
is. Like somebody's got to work somewhere. Like
Yeah,
it just is what it is.
exactly.
But it's like, we see these, we see all these YouTubes and posts on social media and all this whatever. Like everybody's supposed to be an entrepreneur, but that's not necessarily the case. And if you're not an entrepreneur, that doesn't mean you're a failure. Like
Right.
that's the messaging I feel like has been pushed on a lot of millennials, is like, well,
Man,
if you're not running your own business, like, you ain't nothing. But the
that's so
reality is,
important. Mhm.
yeah, but the reality is like there is a lot of change or a lot of things that can be done from within your company. You just got to make sure that you don't turn into a drone. You just have to
Right.
make sure that you're doing your best work, you're bringing new ideas, you're pushing things forward. And it's not just, and you're not just kind of trying to push, just one agenda.
Right.
So that whole intrapreneurial spirit, that's not even a word, but whatever. That spirit,
Yeah.
when you're in a company, that's the thinking that you need to have. Like you're not a failure because you're working, you work at a corporation. You're probably making a bunch, you probably making way more money than the average entrepreneur, to be honest.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's right. That's right.
It's how you carry it. Are
Yeah.
you just towing the company line, or are you like doing what's right and like really trying to make change?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, and it's a super important message for people to hear from someone who has been both. You've been an entrepreneur, you've worked in corporate space.
Right.
I think the focus right now, in particular, on startup culture, incubators, VC funding, and all these things, and that entire world, it's kind of sucking the air out of the broader innovation um, conversation,
Yep.
and it's really almost repositioning itself as the new corporate structure.
Hmm.
And I think what has happened is people have tried to take all the risk out of starting up businesses.
Hmm.
And in the pursuit of that, because to your point right now, if you don't have your own business, you're not trying, right?
Right.
It's and that is, I think it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is.
And so and so I'm so glad to hear you say that and bring that up and say it out loud, because you can listen to 1,000 podcasts, you're not going to hear that 5 times.
I've literally never heard anybody say it other than me. And maybe it's because I've done both.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yep.
it's because I've been very successful on one side and like I've been successful on both ends.
Both sides.
I've
Yeah.
done bad on
Exactly.
both sides too. So it's like,
Yeah.
I get the full thing, and I've from over the years, just so many conversations that I've had with various individuals that have aspirations to be their own boss or start a business or whatever, like whatever what have you.
Hmm.
I started to realize, like, some of these people, like, they're not entrepreneurs. It's like you're
Right.
not autonomous. Like, you like to sleep all day. You like to,
Right.
you're waiting for direction, or you're timid, or you don't, like, there's certain
Yeah.
just qualities that you can't you can't make somebody be like that. Like, they're either assertive or they're not. And it's like, sometimes I feel like individuals that really aren't suited to be entrepreneurs get really down on themselves, that they're working a job or whatever, instead of like realizing that you can max out in this role. Like, you can
Hmm.
jump companies, you can do whatever. Like,
Yep.
there's so many ways that you can find fulfillment within, in a space. It's just more so around like not being scared to try something, not being scared
Right.
to change industries, not being scared to kind of bring your ideas to the table.
Right.
And I think, like, once I started Original Thought Required, and I moved on into different spaces, I just had a different level of confidence, and understanding and how things work, or
Hmm.
just realizing that just because you're a gatekeeper in a company doesn't necessarily mean that you're like actually important, like in the work, like in the grand
Right.
scheme of things. You watch those
Right.
videos where the dad comes home, he's all mean to everybody and stuff like that. That's because he's at work like unfulfilled. Now, he's at work unfulfilled, not because he's
Right.
not his own boss, but he's unfulfilled probably because he's just doing something he doesn't like.
Right.
So you have to find, that the type of work that makes the most sense for you, the type of companies that fit. You have to learn new skills. You have to be willing to take a class. You have to be willing to watch a YouTube video. There's like so many things that where you can kind of actualize like the way that you may view like where you want your life to go. It just might not be through the avenues that you're expecting. Like, you're like, oh man, I've got this great idea. I'm just, for example, I make the coolest bandanas for for myself. I have a bandana on my table. The only reason I brought it up.
Yeah.
I have these handmade bandanas I do, and I love them. But and I think I could start a business by doing this. But if you realize that don't nobody care, like no one really cares about
Right.
handmade bandanas, then like that's a waste. Or if you're scared to go somewhere and meet a manufacturer and figure out what it's going to take to get that done, or if you're scared to go and spend some money on marketing, or
Right.
if you're scared to give up your comfortable lifestyle, or not even scared, or if you just have things that prevent you from doing that, you have a family and you don't want to put them at risk, well then
Right.
now maybe there's a bandana company out there that you can work for. Like, there's like all kinds of ways that you can
Right.
change it. But it's just like we just get so stuck in, they tell you 1 2 3 4 5, but life doesn't really work like that. Like, you might go 1 2 10, come back to 2, go to
Right.
8. Like, it's just it's just the steps aren't in order
Exactly.
like the way that they tell us growing up.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And I think that the thing that people miss as well is there, if you just look at social media and you just, follow what's publicized and what's talked about, there's two kinds of companies. There are startups and there are Fortune 500 companies. And that's the world. If according to
Yeah, the
LinkedIn
internet. Yeah.
posts and social media, Instagram, right? You're either a startup with a VC that just got your Series X funding or whatever, or you're a Fortune 500 company. And I didn't know until I left that world that there are so many companies in America.
Hmm.
$20 million companies, $40
Hmm.
million companies, $400 million companies, $2 billion companies that you've never heard of.
Literally.
And I think people get locked into this. Either I'm gonna sell my soul to the corporate overlords, or I'm going to, or I gotta go, bootstrap it and start my own company. And it's just not the case.
Right. And then if you think about it also, you kind of alluded to it, but these people in these startup, in certain startups, and they take money from a VC or from some sort of investor, and then they're beholden to them now. Like
Yeah.
they don't even get to make all the decisions anymore because they're not even necessarily running the business, but it looks that way. And I
Right.
think, in a lot of cases, like that's what matters the
Right.
most. I mean, I hate to say it, but it is what it is. Like the internet
Yeah.
has made it so much that, like, making announcements for your new deal, whatever the deal is, you just say, "How I got a new deal." You get your hundreds of
hmm
likes and you're good for the day. Or, you sign, you get some investment money or whatever, and you think like, "Oh man, I'm gonna be able to really run this business." But then come to find out, you got to run everything by by the people that gave you the money,
Yeah.
because you're not necessarily the boss. So then it's like, are you?
That's right. You got seven bosses.
Yeah. So it's like, are you really an entrepreneur? Or, like, it's kind of like now you're just
Right.
an empowered director, let's say.
Yeah. I don't think people understand how similar being a manager in corporate America and being a CEO in a venture backed company. I
Mhm.
don't think people understand how similar those experiences can be. Now, the payout might be different
Yeah,
down the
for
road,
sure.
but there's this kind of mythos of autonomy associated with being a CEO,
Mhm.
and it's just not. It just doesn't exist.
It's not the case. Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Dame Dash?
Yes.
Yeah. So he's been saying this for years or whatever, but he has a line. It's like, if you don't put up your own money, you're not the boss, or you're not a boss. And
hmm
I remember hearing it long time ago, and I was in position, like, already store was open. I did it with my own money. I kind of understood it, but like now it's like I really understand it. Like, especially like coming back into the corporate space, because then
Yeah.
you see a lot of people that are directors and up or whatever, and it's kind of like they're moving around like it's their company, but it's not. Like,
Mhm.
you're just making decisions on behalf of the company. But if you're bad for business for any reason, like, you can get let go. So you're not really the boss. So it's like,
Right.
if the numbers
Exactly.
aren't good and you're making too much money, they will let you go. Like, it is
Exactly.
what it is. So it's like we can't continue to fool ourselves.
Exactly.
I feel like it's just the ego. At the end of the day, it's like, all right, well, all these people are listening to me, or
hmm
everybody on social media is saying, I'm the greatest. I'm when I'm making all these moves, I'm connecting with all these people, and that
Yeah.
and that is fine and well. But it's kind of like, if your goal is to have autonomy, then it's like you really need to kind of move in that manner. Like, you really have to be willing to sacrifice, your
Yeah.
lifestyle or what have you, like, just to kind of achieve that goal. And that's kind of like when you're thinking of like pure entrepreneurship. Like, the way I look at it, I'm more of a hybrid. Like, like, I love my autonomy.
Yeah.
I love to be able to make my own decisions. I kind of put myself in position to get that, to kind of get that experience. Like, even in a corporate space, like, yeah,
Right.
I'm beholden to the company, like whoever I'm working for, but I'm also in more flexible, scenarios where I can work how I need to work. I can, kind of pick my projects. I can support, areas of the business that I deem, most important. But at the same time, I'm still able to do X, Y, and Z. I'm able to
Right.
get into real estate. I'm able to invest in the stock market. I'm able to start, new businesses. Like, I'm working on a couple different businesses right now. And it's just kind of like, I have that ability. I have that flexibility to kind of step out and do my own thing, as well as, be really, really good at my job.
hmm
So I think, like, if we kind of think a little bit more of a hybrid approach,
Right.
because at the end of
Right.
the day, like,
Right.
especially as you get older, money is important. Like, you
hmm
can say, I don't need money, or I don't whatever, like, but your life is way easier if you have some money. So it's like, maybe maybe that going all in when
Yes,
you're
sir.
35 years old, on and saying, I'm gonna I'm gonna get rid of my lease, and I'm gonna sleep in the back of my car, I'm gonna do X, Y, and Z. It's a lot harder when when you're older, but there are scenarios or situations that you can create for yourself that allow for you to still,
Yeah.
be able to live the life that you want, still be able to get your creative dreams out there, and still make a decent buck. So it's just kind of like, you just have to find what works best for you.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. And not attribute certain things to the different structures.
Right.
Entrepreneurship, VC backing, bootstrapping, corporate world, private companies,
Yep.
they're all just structures for you to do your thing in. But you have to have that mindset no matter which of those paths you
Yep.
choose, or you're always going to be working for somebody else. You can be an entrepreneur, you can be CEO of a VC backed company, and you're going to be working for somebody else if
Hmm.
you don't have your own point of view on things. You can be a director in a Fortune 500 company and be working for yourself,
Yeah.
and P&G is working for you, or Macy's is working for you, or whoever. Because when you got your own plan, you're out in front, you're identifying the gaps that you want to close. People naturally fall in line behind that, not because you're a great leader, but because you got a plan,
Yeah.
and most people don't.
Yeah.
This has been a great conversation. I want to wrap up with the question I like to close with, which is any advice for innovators out there?
Yeah. I guess my advice to, any innovator out there is to not be afraid to kind of go after it. Like whatever it is that, that you're seeing in the world that, you want to be different, no matter what space that you're in. Whether it's, you got some sort of tech thing that you're doing, you want to just open a normal business, you want to start a nonprofit, whatever gap you're looking to fill, you just have to not be scared to actually take the steps to do it.
Hmm.
You have to get off the porch. When I talk about opening, starting OTR, like I quit my job. I told my parents that I was gonna. I literally told them that I was gonna stay. I was gonna stay at my company, and I was working for an advertising agency. I'm gonna stay there, and I was just gonna run the store on the weekends. Like I kept that story up for like 9 months until like they
Yeah.
realized, like, oh man, you quit your job, and they're just parents. They want the best for you. They want you to be safe or whatever.
Right.
But I had to jump out the window, like, in order to do what I needed to do. And at that point in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
But and it doesn't necessarily have to manifest itself in that way, but you do have to be willing to take a chance. You have to be willing to take the steps. You have to be willing to get told no to. You have to be willing to, to do whatever comes with, kind of living out your dream.
Right.
And when you get it, it might not be what you thought it was going to be, and then you you might
That's
look at something
exactly
else,
right.
start to do something else, or things change. But I would just say, it's always keep an open mind, always be action oriented, and be willing to take those steps. And keep the best circle around you as possible. Those supporters that are going to tell you when you're doing great, those supporters that are going to tell you when when you did a crappy job. Not belittle you
Yeah.
about it, but like, step your game up, that kind of thing.
That's
And
right.
if you
That's
get
right.
some solid people around you that really support you and believe in you as a person and or your vision, you can't go wrong.
I love it, man. Love it. That's good advice for everyone, myself included. I really appreciate you sharing that. Thank you, James. Thank you for your time today, man, and thanks for answering my LinkedIn message after so long.
But no, it was great to catch up for sure.
Yeah, yeah, appreciate it, and let's do it again sometime.
All right, that'll work. Take it easy.
All right, take care. We'd love to hear your thoughts about this week's show. You can drop us a line on Twitter at Outlast LLC, OUTLAST LLC, or follow us on LinkedIn where we're Outlast Consulting. Until next time, keep innovating, whatever that means.